So my concern is on the tariffs. Who pays tariffs, Mr. Secretary? No. Answer the questions I asked, please. I only have 5 minutes. Who pays tariffs?
Sorry. Well,
who pays tariffs?
Sorry,
Mr. Secretary, please.
Excuse me.
The question is very simply, who pays tariffs, Mr. Chairman? I'd like him to answer that question.
Well,
He wants to answer other questions.
well, Congressman, if the if the exporters dislike tariffs so much, why wouldn't they? If I think what you're trying to get me to say.
Did you remember the question? I'm not sure you did. Who pays tariffs?
It's a very complicated question.
Reclaiming my time. People pay tariffs, right? Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time. You clearly aren't going to answer. I'm not going to waste my time having you go,
Treasury Secretary Scott Bessent was asked a basic question by Congressman Mark Pocan, who pays tariffs? He couldn't answer. Pay attention to what happens next.
Great. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And thank you, Mr. Secretary, for being with us. My main concern is, I think, what people are looking at the economy. The first 100 days, lowest stock market since Richard Nixon, not usually a measure people are shooting for. On tariffs, the fact that last year we had an effective rate of about 2.5%. I think the Yale Budget Lab, and I believe you went to Yale, has said that effective rate is closer to 28%, the highest since 1901. I know that some of that's changed because the tariffs are on again, off again, some on again, some off again, somewhat chaotic. I believe as your term is crazy Ivan style. I compare them to how a monkey throws dung. You're not exactly sure where they're going to land. And that's the concern I have as a small business owner, and I know Ms. Luzenkamp-Perez is as well. I've got small businesses really worried. You made a comment about while cargo volumes have dropped 60%, you see this as a temporary detox. But for a small business that's getting by day to day, that's much bigger. You talked about Main Street. We want to finally focus on Main Street, not Wall Street. I think you were at a global investor conference in Beverly Hills yesterday. That's the cocktail party where you mentioned the crazy Ivan theory. And before that, you were at a JP Morgan Chase World Bank private investor summit. All those things are not Main Street, right? Main Street is an auto body repair, a specialty printer. So my concern is on the tariffs. Who pays tariffs, Mr. Secretary? No. Answer the questions I asked, please. I only have 5 minutes. Who pays tariffs?
Sorry. Well,
who pays tariffs?
Sorry,
Mr. Secretary, please.
Excuse me.
The question is very simply, who pays tariffs, Mr. Chairman? I'd like him to answer that question.
Well,
he wants to answer other questions.
Well, Congressman, if the exporters dislike tariffs so much, why wouldn't they? If I think what you're trying to get me to say.
Did you remember the question? I'm not sure you did. Who pays tariffs?
It's a very complicated question.
Reclaiming my time. People pay tariffs, right? Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time, Mr. Secretary. Reclaiming my time. You clearly aren't going to answer. I'm not going to waste my time having you go, Mr. Secretary, Mr. Chairman, I asked reclaiming my time. Mr. Chairman, and I asked to reclaim my time. Did I not? No, I said reclaiming my time because he's clearly not answering it. So, yeah, so as a small business owner, and unfortunately I'd like that time back since you failed to recognize me for 30 seconds. So I just recently from one of my suppliers got the tariff surcharge on things. And in addition to the tariff surcharge, guess what else got raised? American-made walnut plaques. That has nothing to do with tariffs, but companies take advantage and do that. So right now, we are getting screwed right and left because of the indiscriminate use of tariffs. That's the reality for Main Street. And you go off to Beverly Hills where private investor conferences and talk about crazy Ivan theories. Answer that. What is the crazy Ivan theory of tariffs that you mentioned at the summit?
Well, first of all, sir, I've had meetings with more than 50 small lenders. So I want to clarify that. I would also say that in game theory, strategic uncertainty, of which you seem to like the name Crazy Ivan.
Well, it's your words, correct? Didn't you use Crazy Ivan at the?
Well, you've used it 5 times, and
that's the question, Mr. Chairman.
I am saying the strategic uncertainty is part of negotiations. Should we say, here's what we'll accept? Please take this.
Okay, I've got your answer. Thank you. I'm going to reclaim my time again. So for a small business, we don't have that luxury, right? When the ports are empty in California, and we can't get goods and people are stocking up for Christmas goods. Crazy Ivan is great for please don't take this offense, really rich people like you, but for people like me, it's not, right? That's what makes small businesses fail. That's what makes people lose their jobs. That's what makes the stock market tank. So I'll ask one more time, who pays tariffs?
Sir, the history would show that it is a complicated mix of who pays the tariffs over various times.
So that's exactly the problem. If your answer, and you are a very educated person, you have a very impressive bio, cannot answer the question who pays tariffs because you won't answer that, and you say it's a complicated issue. It's not complicated. Consumers pay Trump's tariff tax. That's the reality. And I'll yield back, Mr. Chairman, but I do think next time if I ask to yield back.
This exchange matters far beyond a viral moment or a heated committee hearing because it exposes something most Americans are feeling but rarely see laid bare in real time: the gap between economic theory spoken in elite rooms and the lived reality on Main Street. What Mark Pocan did here wasn't grandstanding, it was translation. He took abstract language, strategic uncertainty, temporary detox, game theory, and forced it into plain English, where it either made sense or collapsed under its own weight. And when it collapsed, it revealed exactly who Trump-era tariff policy actually serves. Let's start with the bigger picture. Tariffs are often sold to the public as a kind of economic weapon aimed outward, a way to punish foreign countries, protect American jobs, and force better trade deals. That framing sounds intuitive, even patriotic, but it leaves out the most important part of how tariffs actually work in practice. A tariff is a tax paid at the border by the importer, not by China, not by Mexico, not by the EU. The American company importing the goods pays it first, and then that cost gets passed along the supply chain. Sometimes it shows up as higher prices for consumers. Sometimes it shows up as thinner margins for small businesses. Often, it's both. That's not ideology, that's basic economics, and it's been documented repeatedly across administrations and trade regimes. That's why Pocan's question, who pays tariffs, is so devastating. Because if the policy really worked the way it's marketed, the answer would be simple and politically advantageous. The fact that Scott Bessent, a highly educated Treasury Secretary, repeatedly refused to answer tells you everything you need to know. When officials retreat to phrases like, "it's complicated," what they're often doing is avoiding accountability. Complexity becomes a shield. But for people running an auto body shop, a specialty printer, or a small manufacturing business, complexity doesn't reduce the bill. It doesn't delay payroll. It doesn't keep the lights on. Costs still hit, whether the explanation is simple or sophisticated. And here's where the Crazy Ivan concept becomes especially revealing. In military terms, a Crazy Ivan maneuver is designed to confuse an adversary. In high-level negotiation theory, unpredictability can sometimes create leverage. But economies are not chessboards, and working families are not bargaining chips. Small businesses survive on predictability. They plan inventory months in advance. They negotiate supplier contracts based on stable assumptions. They hire workers and set wages based on expected costs. When tariffs are turned on, turned off, selectively applied, or rhetorically threatened with no clear timeline, that entire planning structure collapses. Uncertainty becomes a cost in itself. That's why Pocan's example about tariff surcharges is so important. Once uncertainty enters the system, price increases don't stay neatly confined to tariff-affected goods. Suppliers raise prices across the board because they can. They don't know what's coming next, so they pad margins to protect themselves. Even American-made products, which tariffs are supposedly meant to help, get more expensive. The chaos spreads. This is how inflationary pressure sneaks in through the back door, not because every company is greedy, but because instability forces defensive behavior throughout the economy. And the people least able to absorb those shocks are the ones at the bottom and the middle, not the investors attending private summits in Beverly Hills. That contrast matters. While the administration frames tariff volatility as a clever negotiating tactic, the consequences are being felt at empty ports, disrupted supply chains, and stressed small businesses trying to figure out how they're going to stock shelves for the holidays. For someone living quarter to quarter, strategic uncertainty isn't strategy, it's risk without consent. And that brings us to the democratic issue at the heart of this exchange. Economic policy in a democracy is supposed to be accountable to the people who bear its costs. If policymakers can't plainly explain who pays for a policy, that policy has already failed the transparency test. Pocan wasn't asking for a white paper. He was asking for honesty. And when honesty finally broke through, it came not from the Treasury Secretary, but from the elected representatives saying out loud what millions already know from their receipts. Consumers pay Trump's tariff tax. That's the lesson viewers should walk away with. Not just that this hearing was tense or dramatic, but that economic language can obscure power. When policy is framed as sophisticated, inevitable, or too complex for ordinary people to understand, it often means the costs are being shifted onto those with the least voice. Moments like this remind us why questioning matters, why clarity matters, and why democracy doesn't work when accountability is replaced by jargon. If this breakdown helped you understand what was really happening beneath the surface of that exchange, take a moment to like the video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who's trying to make sense of the economy beyond talking points. The more people understand how these policies actually work, the harder it becomes to sell chaos as competence.